Caught my troublesome neighbor dumping trash on my property despite police warnings, and now his housemates are drug dealers back from jail. I've been dealing with some bad neighbors for 3 years now. So an old man lives there who had a wife that passed away before I moved in. Now some younger people from the projects, who aren't related to him, take advantage of him and live with him rent-free. How they met, I don't know. Despite the less than reputable characters that live with him, the old man is the biggest thorn in my side. I wish I could post pictures in this subreddit, but I'll just have to describe it. My house is situated further back from the road than theirs. I can see into their backyard from my front door. The old man likes to drive into his yard and pull up to his front door to unload groceries so he doesn't have to walk as far to take them in the house. I understand that part. The problem is, he pulls down my driveway, then across my yard to get to his front door. It kills my grass and leaves ruts in the yard. The next time I saw him outside, I asked him to stop driving in my yard and he said he would, but he kept doing it. A second time I asked him to stop, and again it didn't stop. After the third I was angry, so I went to his house and pounded on the door but nobody answered. I went home, wrote an angry note, and package taped it to his door threatening to call the police if it happened again. Surprise, it happened again. So after the fourth time it happened I went to the police, and the police told him to stop and he did. To this day he hasn't driven in my yard, thank goodness. But the story doesn't end here. After my trouble with him I put Ring cameras up on my property, and last month my cameras caught something baffling. He dumped a big box TV on my property. I have a huge yard and a lot of land, I even own some woods. He has a fenced-in yard and also owns some woods. He rode his lawn mower into my front yard, down my side yard and into my backyard all the way to my woods, and dumped a box TV back there. It wasn't even 3 feet into the woods. You know, rather than leave it by the curb for the garbage company to recycle for free, he had to get rid of it on my property. The audacity. So naturally I took a picture of the TV and pulled the recordings from my cameras and took it to the police. The police are charging him with littering and forcing him to remove the TV and dispose of it properly, as well as trespassing him from my property. He'll be hit with criminal mischief if he sets even a foot on my property again. There was one morning last year where I woke up to go to work in the morning, and there were like 10 local police cars and state cops all outside his house. Here the people from the projects that were living with him were dealing drugs out of his house and they were doing a bust on them. Everyone but the old man was arrested, and they just got let out of jail this month and are back in the house. I really just need to move. It's a shame because I live in such a nice neighborhood. It's the reason I even picked the house, the location. I've talked to my other neighbors about the bad neighbors and they said everything was fine before the old man's wife died. But now he almost seems like he has dementia and is being taken advantage of by some bad people. And now I have drug dealers and trespassers right next door. FML. Update 1. Here's the link to my original post for those who haven't seen it or need a refresher. About a week ago I posted talking about my issues with my neighbor driving through my yard in the past and how I had the police tell them to stop, and how more recently my neighbor dumped a large box TV on my property, caught on my cameras and reported to the police. Yesterday, my camera caught my neighbor leaving a handwritten note on my door that I read when I got home from work, and I also heard from the police regarding the TV. I'll start with the conversation I had with the police and leeway into the note he left on my door. The police had been trying to reach my neighbor by phone for the last week, and had made multiple visits to their house to tell him to remove the TV, but he wasn't answering his phone or the door. So the officers on duty have been making routine visits on our street to see if they could catch him outside, and they finally did. They told him he had to remove the TV and he was livid, naturally. He tried to claim that the property wasn't mine and was his. It's mine, not sure why he thinks otherwise considering a fence separates our properties, and that he could do what he wants. The officers said whether it was mine or his was irrelevant, as littering is littering and you can't dispose of electric waste by dropping it in the woods and pretending it isn't there. So they told him he had to dispose of it properly, and they told me if the TV isn't gone in 3 to 4 days to call them again and they're going to give him a citation for it. So that was yesterday that this conversation happened between them. Around lunchtime was when my Ring camera caught him leaving the note. The note said along the lines of I am giving you until June 1st to trim branches of a tree on your property that are dropping leaves and twigs into my property, or I'm filing a civil suit against you. I am tired of picking up the sticks and leaves dropped on my yard by your tree. So naturally the first thing I did was look up my state and local laws, and also went to the police station to notify the officers that this happened so they were aware of it and could make a report. The officers at the station told me not to worry about it, they know what he's like and he wouldn't actually go through with it. He's just mad that I got him in trouble and is taking it out on me with any excuse he can come up with, and the officers told me it's not my responsibility to take care of it. Our state and local laws state that it's not the responsibility of the owner to trim branches that protrude over property line, but that property owner that it is protruding on is allowed to cut back the branches back off of their property line. Whether you agree with that or not is up to you, but that's the law that I both read and that the police department informed me of. But here's the thing, the tree is healthy and it's not dropping large branches or anything of the sort, nor does it go over anything that would cause damage to his property. Even if it did, insurance takes care of that, it's not my responsibility. He's obviously butthurt about me getting him in trouble these last few months and is reaching at anything he possibly can to cause trouble for me like I have for him. Unfortunately, I'm an upstanding citizen and he has no grounds to get me in trouble with anything. Also, our police department and local government despises him and his residents so much that even if this somehow does go to court, his word is nothing compared to mine. So, I'm calling his bluff and ignoring him. I know him well enough at this point too, I'm not giving him the attention he wants. If he would have been kind about the situation and had a respectful conversation with me about the tree, I would have been a lot more considerate. But he didn't even talk to me about it. Now that he thinks he can threaten me, he can forget it. The amount he's inconvenienced me severely outweighs leaves falling from my tree into his yard. Maybe when he stops driving across my yard and dumping garbage on my property and trespassing, I'll think about whether or not to help him. I can't believe there's people on this planet so selfish. See my last post for the details on how these people are the scum of our community. Crack-dealing sociopaths in the one garbage house of our nice neighborhood. I'm really disappointed things have ended up this way because the whole reason I even got the house was because of the neighborhood, but I had to pick the one place next door to the crack dealers and trespassers. Again, FML. I'm going to start looking for a new place to live. I'm so thankful the police has been so helpful and understanding of the situation, but it seems no matter how many times I send them and no matter how willing they are to cause trouble for me, this needless drama won't end until they're out of that house or I just leave. I keep to myself. I'm a single, quiet guy who minds his own business in his own house. I just want to be left alone. It's time to start looking elsewhere, I think. Anyways, I hope my strife has been entertaining. I'll probably have another update after the first week of June regarding all of this. Would you have done anything differently? Let me know if you have any advice. Thanks. Here's the link to my last post, which also has the link to the original post. This will be my final update regarding what's been going on, unless anything substantial happens in the future. I don't think anything else is going to come of this particular situation, but some things have happened between now and my last post. Here's what's happened. In my last posts I told the story of my recent strife with my neighbor, an old man who keeps trespassing on my property and drove through my yard on multiple occasions, only stopping after the police made him do so. He then trespassed again by dumping a large box TV in my woods in my backyard. After telling the police about the TV and after they confronted him and told him to remove it, he left a note on my door threatening legal action for a tree that's dropping leaves and twigs in his yard, and if I didn't take care of it by June 1st, he'd be suing me. For the finer details where I went more in depth about it, see my last post from about a week and a half ago from the link above. As for the update, it's now June 3rd and naturally I've done nothing about the tree. Countless conversations with other people, including the police, as well as my own research tell me I'm not responsible. I haven't heard from the neighbor, haven't heard from anybody on his behalf, haven't gotten any more notes on my door or in my mailbox or anything of the sort. It was just as we suspected, all bark no bite. He was mad about me getting him in trouble and tried to intimidate me and it didn't work. He's since removed the TV. Where he put it I'm not sure, I never saw it on the curb for the garbage or anything. For all I know he could have just threw it in his own woods, but I don't care enough to attempt to find out. It's off my property and none of my business anymore as a result. I also double-checked with the police to be sure that he was trespassed for good, and they assured me he was, and him removing the TV from my property was the last time he or anybody in that house was permitted from stepping foot on it, and he understood this. As many commenters suggested, I went down to our local human services building in our township and spoke to somebody in the Office of Aging. It's our version of Adult Protective Services. I spent an hour at their office and made a full report on the whole situation to them, the old man and his seemingly declined mental state and physical state, the types of people living with him. I gave them all the juicy details, from the footage of him struggling to climb 2 stairs onto my porch to leave the note showcasing his physical state, to another time where he chased a squirrel on his lawn mower into my yard showcasing his mental state. I even showed them the footage I had from the raid on his house where the people that were living with him were, temporarily, arrested for dealing crack out of his house. I gave them the names of the people living with him, given to me by my buddy in the police department who has been dealing with them for me. I left no detail out, no stone unturned. The woman I spoke with submitted the report to their investigation unit, but she said I wouldn't get an update regarding the situation. I'm only going to hear from anybody if they ask for more information from me. Only time will tell if this will do any good not only for myself, but for the old man too. Update 2. Well, folks, if you're hoping things finally quieted down next door, think again. I genuinely thought that would be my last update, either because there'd be nothing left to say, or because the only new development would be me packing a U-Haul and waving goodbye to this circus. But the universe, my neighbor, and his motley houseguests apparently had other plans. Buckle up, because this past week has felt like someone took my life, cranked the chaos dial, and then broke it off. Let me set the scene. It's exactly 6 days after my last post. The neighborhood is full of that pre-summer buzz, with lawnmowers in the distance, and someone 2 doors down evidently learning the bagpipes all day. Don't ask. If I hear Amazing Grace one more time I'll lose it. I'm out front with my weed whacker, noise-canceling headphones firmly on, when my Ring camera pings my phone. Through the corner of the house, I catch a blur of motion on my feed, a figure hauling something, suspiciously box-shaped from my neighbor's yard. And it's the same 2 young guys who were previously arrested. Only this time, they're working together, pulling an entire busted washing machine across the grass, openly, at 9:30 on a Tuesday. I walk toward the side fence to keep an eye on them, thinking, no way. Not again. But rather than dumping it on my property, they veer hard right and head for the narrow strip of woods between our lots, wrestling the clanking contraption under the branches. I shout, hey, pure instinct, loud enough to startle a crow from a tree. The short one drops his end with an almighty thud and bolts back toward their place, but the other, the one I recognize from mug shots in the local paper, actually turns, shrugs, and yells back, ain't your land, before vanishing into the brush. This becomes relevant because old habits die very hard. Less than an hour later, a county pickup, Department of Environmental Quality, rolls up. Turns out another neighbor, not me, if you can believe it, called in an illegal dumping complaint. 2 agents stomp into my backyard, and I give them the rundown, show the ring footage, and make sure to clarify where my property line is, so there's no future drama. The agents are surprisingly chill, but take down all the details, and before they leave, they tell me, well, you're not the only one on this block dealing with these guys. The implication is ominous. Friday, I get an email from the caseworker at the Office of Aging. Completely unexpected, since she'd told me I wouldn't be updated. She says she can't reveal much, but there has been some intervention. I piece together what this means when, later that afternoon, an unfamiliar car pulls into the neighbor's driveway, and 2 people in polo shirts, one clutching a battered laptop, head into the house. For the rest of the day, there's a steady stream in and out, Meals on Wheels, what must be a nurse, and, most notably, a deputy lingering near the mailbox, shaking his head a lot. I get this view because I'm trimming my hedge with all the nonchalance of David Attenborough observing hyenas. Saturday morning, I discover a fresh round of strangeness. There's a white envelope tucked, almost apologetically, under my doormat. No writing, just a printed legal notice inside. Apparently, the old man's son, whom no one's seen in years, has been granted temporary power of attorney pending a full mental health assessment. The big reveal? The house is about to get audited for code violations. My hunch is that the social workers saw enough squalor for a full investigation. The note includes a lawyer's business card and an apology for the trouble caused by Mr. Redacted and unauthorized house guests. So, for the first time in 3 years, there's actual acknowledgement from a family member that things are very messed up. Now, here comes the fireworks. Sunday night, I'm on my porch, relishing the quiet, and suddenly a parade of unrecognizable vehicles jams up the street. 2 are sheriff's cruisers, 1 a battered white moving truck. Over the next 2 hours, the deputies, along with a pair of hefty movers, systematically relocate the crackheads' suitcases and laundry baskets to the curb. The old man stands by silently under the watch of one of the officers, looking bewildered and clutching a plastic grocery bag of medication bottles. I watch the entire eviction drama through my blinds, sipping a beer and feeling a mix of relief, and I'm glad I've got all this on camera. The piece de resistance, a massive county dump crew arrives Monday morning at 8 a.m., with a front loader and a supervisor barking orders. They start clearing debris from the woods, my side, the fence, and their lot. The washing machine, a few old mattresses, that TV, yes, apparently it got moved to their woods after police involvement, decades of junk, all gone in a single, beautiful sweep. Turns out the county got grant funding to clean up illegal dumping in hazardous yards for elderly residents. As one crew member joked, sometimes it just takes a squeaky wheel. By mid-afternoon, not only is my property clear for the first time since I moved in, but the backyard that once looked like a set from Breaking Bad is clean, too. An older woman, who might be the old man's sister or cousin, from the resemblance, waves to me and mouths, "Thank you." The old man sits on the steps as a nurse checks his blood pressure, staring blankly but finally, outnumbered by people who seem to have his best interests at heart. For the first day in years, I don't feel like I have to watch my back, check my cameras every hour, or wonder what's buried behind the next pile of trash. To summarize, I guess the moral of the story is, trust your gut, document everything, talk to literally everyone, the police, the city, the social workers, and, eventually, something might click. My life has verged into local drama territory, and honestly, I'm not sure I'll ever want to live next to another single elderly man, no offense, but for now, my front yard is safe, my woods are clear, and the only people visiting next door are there to help, not to hurt. I'll keep updating if something wild happens, knowing my luck, it probably will. But for tonight, I'm raising a glass to small victories and wishing a loud, triumphant good riddance to the bad neighbors. If you hear bagpipes in the distance, just know I'm not the one orchestrating the chaos for once. Update 3. I wish I could say the saga ends with a little peace, a fresh mowed yard, and a couple days where nobody calls my name across the fence. But as I said before, and apparently needed to learn again, the universe, and whatever chaos deity is working overtime in my zip code, wasn't done with me yet. I'm starting to think my land is cursed. The dawn after the big clean out, it felt, for a moment, like it wasn't. Neighbors actually stopped while walking dogs to chat and smile. One dropped off cookies as a sorry you've had to deal with all this gesture, and even the birds sounded chirpier than usual. The old man's house, for one rare morning, was quiet except for the gentle tick of some professional nurse's car door shut at 8 a.m. For the first time in, maybe ever, I stood at my window and didn't feel like I had to police my tree line. But by lunchtime, things got strange. I noticed movement in my backwoods, thought no way, and checked the ring notifications, expecting to see a nurse walking the property or maybe someone with code enforcement following up. What I did not expect was to see a drone. Yes, a legit quadcopter with some gnarly camera, buzzing low through the trees, pausing to inspect, swinging back and forth, making lazy circles over the property line. Now, my paranoia had been maxed out for months, but this was new. I walked outside and squinted, and sure enough, there it was, pausing, hovering steady, clearly filming. It wasn't one of those kids' toy drones either. This had a real rig. At first, I worried the drug dealers were back in high-tech form, scoping out somewhere to drop more junk, but after a couple minutes the drone zipped right up and over the old man's house. So, being me, I did what I now do automatically, called the police non-emergency line. While on the phone, I spotted a nondescript sedan parked a few houses up the street. 2 men in khakis and blue windbreakers stood by it, watching the drone's progress. I had a surreal thought, maybe the universe had finally brought me law enforcement that could actually fly. Turns out, you can't make this up. A real estate team, and, apparently, the house's new legal conservator, hired a surveying company to do an aerial assessment. Why? The old man's son, now armed with that temporary power of attorney, isn't just stopping at cleaning house, he's prepping for a possible sale, citing long-term care needs in a phone call I never thought I'd receive. He apologized for the inconvenience and, get this, offered to have a professional crew mulch and reseed my yard where it had been trashed over the past few years. I would have thought it scam, but the man actually showed up in person, suit, briefcase, kind eyes, awkward handshake, awkward apologies. I took him up on the yard offer. Maybe I'm spineless, but after what my grass endured, I'd take a new lawn from Satan himself. 2 days later, the real fun started. Some of the evicted house guests, the worst of them, had apparently been using the property as their personal stash spot, and weren't ready to see their valuables lost. I know this because one afternoon, while sitting on my porch reading, trying to act normal for once, I heard shouting from the woods. 3 guys were thrashing through undergrowth behind the fence, doing a bad job of whispering. I managed to film from my kitchen window as they trampled the mulch beds and, get this, tried hacking their way into the crawl space beneath the old man's shed, the same shed they'd used to dump their old furniture, trash, etc. The police, yet again, showed up, fast, this time, because the new caseworker had set up a security rotation and actually had already flagged these guys half a block away. One ran, one tried to argue he was just here to pick up his bike, and the third, the guy who'd screamed at me across the property line months before, started loudly accusing the old man of stealing his stuff. The balls on these people, I swear. They ended up arrested and, from what I gather, at least one is facing fresh charges. The rest of my block came out to watch from their doorsteps, all popcorn and I told you so energy. In the midst of this, the old man wound up being temporarily placed in an assisted living facility. I watched as he was quietly escorted out by a nurse and 2 staffers, no fuss, just a small duffel bag and pillow. For all his trouble, he seemed relieved, is maybe the word. Maybe now, finally, he'll be taken care of, and I hope nobody can take advantage of him again. That left the house itself. Another new cast of characters appeared, a locksmith, a junk removal team, and, finally, realtors. Within 3 days, a literal parade of looky-loos with clipboards, lawn flags, and measuring tapes trooped through. Apparently my neighborhood, which was the nice part of town before all this, is firmly back in demand. The house is about to get a full overhaul, everything from asbestos remediation to a fresh roof and siding. I'll admit, I'll be nursing some PTSD every time I see a U-Haul pull up next door, but a polite contractor in a high-vis vest beats a drug dealer throwing glass in your woods any day. But wait, one last twist, because of course. On Thursday morning, as the landscapers worked on my yard, the 2 guys who run the crew quietly reported they'd found a duffel bag under the back steps filled with all kinds of things I wish I didn't hear about. Possible stolen goods, tools, and, allegedly, a small baggie of unknown substance. They left it untouched and called the police, who swooped in and bagged it up. I gave my side, showed my footage, and made another cup of coffee. So that brings us to today. My yard is, miraculously, looking amazing. The property next door is clean, empty, and under renovation, with a coming soon sign already staked by the mailbox. No more shouting, no more mystery appliances lurking in the brush, no more trespassing. I feel like my own life is back to quiet, at least for now. Still, if I learned anything, it's to never, ever take for granted a day where the craziest noise is just the wind, or maybe a neighbor's bagpipes bleeding through the air. And if the new owners turn out to be amateur musicians, well, it's about 1,000 times better than what came before. Update 4. But, of course, if you thought this was where the saga fizzled out and the credits rolled on my own personal neighborhood documentary, you're giving the world too much credit for sanity and not enough for sheer cosmic spaghetti-throwing lunacy. Because apparently, that house was Pandora's box, and the moment it got opened, all manner of dormant weirdness took the opportunity to crawl out and scramble onto my lawn. And reader, I am but a humble man with a weed whacker and a frail hope of peace. First, demolition began. Every morning at 8 sharp, a rotating crew of contractors, none of whom seemed to speak the same language as each other, let alone me, would show up and blast music from some paint-peeled pickup. The old man's mystery woods evidently held 50 years' worth of chemical cans, rusted automotive blobs, and what looked suspiciously like a bear trap. The demo guys called Animal Control, who called the local news, who ran a story about possible illegal trapping. I was interviewed, but only my legs made the 6 o'clock segment. Fame, then, as the workers stripped siding, they uncovered the world's most epic collection of stuffed squirrels, dozens of them, long dead, preserved under plastic like furry pharaohs. Turns out, the old man was a taxidermy hobbyist, a detail no one seemed to recall until Channel 7 showed up with the footage. Yes, my mailbox made the background this time. I learned a valuable lesson: never, ever try to eat lunch while someone hauls out a trash bag full of glass-eyed rodents. But wait, it gets better. The day after the squirrel scoop, a backhoe unearthed an ancient, rusted sign nailed to a chunk of oak that said, and I quote, "Mad Dog's Fort, keep out." The foreman, after calling a laughing fit, gave it to me, saying, "You survived next door, you deserve the local heirloom." I hung it in my garage, seemed fitting. The noise and chaos hit critical mass when one especially ambitious contractor accidentally ruptured what must have been an old, defunct septic line. I'll spare you the details, but the scent could have peeled the stripes off a skunk at 30 paces. The block had to be closed off for 6 hours while a hazmat team came out and looked at me like I was the idiot who built his house next to Chernobyl. Guilty as charged, I guess. Now, you're probably thinking, certainly, the new arrivals will be an improvement. Well, it turns out, waiting for a house to be move-in ready on my block is like waiting for lightning to strike the same spot. Dangerous if you're standing too close, but you just have to see how it plays out. For a week, all was eerie stillness. Then the new soon-to-be owners started coming by. It's a youngish couple, the kind who wear matching gym gear and carry reusable water bottles emblazoned with the logo for their vegan meal prep business. They're friendly, all right. Too friendly. Within the first 10 minutes, they knocked on my door, handed over a mason jar of homemade kefir, and asked if I'd be open to collaborating on building a chicken coop that'd straddle the property line. When I didn't respond enthusiastically, they offered to host a block kombucha tasting. I may never make eye contact again, but, God help me, they're quiet, keep their recycling in order, and already hired 2 different lawn care services, on alternating days, for some reason. One afternoon, the guy, whose name is Ash, I think, asked if I'd seen any evidence of residual negative energy. I am not making this up. When I replied that the only thing I'd seen was the lingering memory of squirrel mummies, he went pale and hurriedly began researching smudging rituals for houses with history. That weekend, I watched as he and his partner performed a ceremony involving sage, singing bowls, recited mantras, and a playlist labeled Witch Talk Cleanse Mix Volume 2. Honestly? If it keeps the meth heads away, I'll buy them incense sticks myself. But Pandora's box wasn't done with me just yet. Just as the renovations were wrapping up, new paint, new fence, new mailbox that doesn't look like it came from a dystopian salvage yard, the humorous side effect of the local news coverage, yes, more than one story now, kicked in: urban explorers and TikTokers. My woods, a pleasant, previously unremarkable chunk of second-growth maple, became a destination for bored teenagers desperate to spot the Mad Dog Fort or the Squirrel Crypt. One night at 2 a.m., my Ring app records a girl in a tie-dye shirt and Doc Martens giving a breathless monologue to an iPhone about residual trauma and spirit orbs. Figured I'd check my lottery ticket the same morning. Honestly, it was only a matter of time before my property officially became the most surveilled half-acre in the county. But here's the kicker: that drone from the real estate survey sparked interest at City Hall, which, as I found out after a knock one rainy Tuesday, had a map showing a decades-old public right-of-way slicing right along the back fence. Some brilliant city planner wants to make a walkable pathway connecting my road to the main trail system. In other words, the woods that were dumping grounds for drugs, trash, and squirrel tombs for years will now be a nature experience corridor, complete with signage. That's right, soon, there'll be a path, a bench, and probably a QR code about invasive species. Every scout troop, jogger, and heritage walker in the county will be going past where the junkies used to dump VCRs. You can't write this stuff. The city did give me a heads up, and offered to build a privacy fence, which I took them up on faster than you can say playground noise at 7 a.m. The new owners next door are, naturally, delighted, and offered to construct a little free library dedicated to local history just off the new path. I bit my tongue. So here's where I stand now. A little older, a little more cynical, and with more cable news cameos than I care to recall. My lawn is a rival to the golf courses, my woods neat as a pin, and next door there's not a single dented appliance to be seen. The street itself is bustling, kids, joggers, friendly hellos, while a hand-painted sign announces former home of the Mad Dog Fort, all neighbors welcome. Besides the residual kombucha fumes and a mild phobia of drones, it's peaceful as anywhere this side of sanity. As for the old man, word is he's settling in at an assisted living complex across town. Apparently, he's the reigning king of bingo night and tells elaborate stories about squirrels and mystery boxes to anyone who'll listen. They say he's happier now, and, I hope, beyond the reach of anyone looking to take advantage. I sent a card. Sometimes, quiet is the best neighbor there is. For now, that's what I've got. But knowing my luck, and this street, if anything else insane happens, you'll read about it first here.